I'm the academic leader at Central Manchester. My name's Ben Parker. I'm a rheumatologist. I've spoken to a few of you at different events over the last 8 months, the MRES and various other places. So if you've heard me talk, I apologise if I say exactly the same thing. Can I just get a feel? Who's applying this year? Who's in final year applying now? Most of you. Who's in fourth year who wants to apply next year? And who's somebody else who's not applying with those 2 things? Okay, are those who are applying, who's come through the MRES? Or who's done an MRES? Okay, so you may have come across me at one of those MRES teaching days, so apologies. Right, okay, I'm happy to be interrupted, but I know there's a Q&A at the end of networking. I'll leave some time at the end for questions, and we've got Matt just arrived from Bolton, who's going to be your AFP person, who's a current FY1. So I was given the broad, can I just give you an overview about the AFP programme, or the Academic Foundation programme, and I've decided to do it like this. So I will talk to you about Academic Foundation as an overview. My role in the Academic Foundation and academic training in general, because I think knowing the Academic Foundation, the academic structure, is quite useful when you're applying for any stage of academic training. There's obvious those who know and who don't know when you ask them the question. I will advertise the Academic Foundation programme at Central, because that's my prerogative, and I'll talk to you about the application process. If there's anything I haven't covered in there, then that's what the Q&A is for. So I apologise if you wanted something completely different. So I've lifted this off the Academic Foundation application website for the Northwest. This is what the Academic Foundation training is supposed to be. I like the way they call it a fabulous opportunity. They are very pleased with themselves. It is an opportunity, fabulous or otherwise, for foundation doctors to do something other than just foundation training. And you may argue, well, why do I need to do something else? Because foundation training is, in and of itself, challenging and interesting. For some people it's not challenging and interesting enough, and therefore there's more time for you to do other things. It's worth bearing in mind it's additional to foundation competencies. It is not instead of. So what is the Academic Foundation? Most of you will know this, I hope, but there is additional training offered to around 5% of foundation doctors, so there's about 450 posts nationally. It is to give you additional experience in one of 3 key areas, and it is an additional time in the foundation programme. So you don't get 4 months added on at the end, but you have to achieve your competencies, and then you can use the spare time that you've got in whichever programme you're in to achieve additional things. It's designed to help junior doctors try to develop their skills and their competencies in areas other than just clinical practice. And it's to support the integrated clinical academic training programme that the NIHR launched about 10 years ago. professional integrity issues. So if you're just a bit rubbish and it doesn't work, you can't fail your foundation programme. If you are unreliable, don't turn up, lie, cheat, play poker all day, then that may be a questioning about your professional integrity. So individual trust will run this slightly differently, but in general you can't fail it. So any questions about the foundation programme in general? Because that's just a general, very quick overview, and they do vary around the country, but it's difficult to know exactly what the programmes offer. Has anyone thought about where they want to go? Everyone wants to stay in Manchester? Right answer. Scotland. Ooh, okay. I mean, it's the same rules apply, but it's a question of how their programmes run. So look at what they've got on their websites. The websites currently have been all updated, I think. Everything that's on the North West website has been reviewed and checked this year, so it's all up to date. Okay. So, what do I do? So I have a few hats. So I'm a rheumatologist at MRI. I'm 50-50 over here as a senior lecturer. I lead the academic foundation programme, and I was asked to sit on the steering group for the integrated clinical academic training operations group, which is as exciting as its name sounds. I also have a role in the clinical research facility and a few other bits and pieces in terms of research training. So what's quite good is having a bit of an overview of what's going on in academic training generally and in research in general, because then actually your academic leads can give you a little bit of career advice as well as supervisory tasks and teaching. So most of the academic leads should have a bit of an academic track record. So it's just what I do at CMFT day to day is I supervise the academic component of the FY2. I don't supervise the foundation programme. Don't ask me about anything about tracks and streams and swapping and X, Y, and Z. I genuinely don't really know. My job is to really direct and guide the academic attachment of the people that come in FY1 and FY2. We've taken it upon ourselves to give additional academic teaching on top of that 4-month block, and I sort of attend the foundation programme meetings to just make sure that I'm telling everyone what I'm doing and that they can tell me what they're doing. So there is an overview and an oversight of that. But regionally I help with the Northwest recruitment of academic foundation and sit on this group that talks about what the ACFs are doing, what the academic clinical lecturers are doing, what the MRes is doing, and what happens when people have finished their academic training. So that streamlined approach is quite useful to keep people in the loop. Because this is one stage in your training. It doesn't make or break it either way. Clinical academic training, do most of you kind of know the structure? Yeah, no. Okay. So one of the things that's quite key in interview planning is it's always quite good if people know what the next stage of their life is going to be. It may not be that that's what happens, and it may not be that anyone checks on what you said in an interview happens 2 years later. But if you can talk about the progression of your career to the next stage, that usually means that you're well informed and know what's going on. So academic foundation programme is not, as I said before, funded by the NIHR, but it certainly helps support the NIHR training schemes to get more clinical academics trained in the UK more quickly. So in Manchester, in every area, there is a university that oversees academic training, clinical academic training, along with the deanery, as was Health Education North West, as is. In Manchester, that's the University of Manchester and Health Education North West. So clinical academic training in Manchester has an oversight committee that has a representative for the MRes, because that's the starting point for a lot of people, AFP, ACF, which is Academic Clinical Fellow, and ACL Academic Clinical Lectureships. And it has a representation from the deanery as well. And that group of people are there to ensure that the opportunities are shared up and down that clinical academic training structure. So teaching days are shared, that good candidates are talked about in that meeting. Okay, so names are bandied around of people who do really well. It's there to arrange additional teaching, so it was an annual day. So those of you doing the MRes may have been to the annual ICAT day last September, October. Those of you doing it this year, there's one in December. You may know about it. Some of you are talking, maybe not you directly. And it's there to support trainees in applying for fellowships at the later stage in their career. So the ICAT, the Integrated Clinical Academic Training Programme, has quite a lot of people who are quite senior overseeing it. And these are the people. So it's chaired by Julian Wallace, and there's people like Kimmy Hirich, who does the MRES, who most of you might know. There's me, there's Rachel Lennon for the ACF, there's John McLaughlin for ACL, and it's got Andy Watson, who's the Associate Dean for Foundation Training. So these people sit quite regularly and talk about academic training. And this is what is supposed to happen for those people who are destined to be clinical academics from their medical school careers. How many people follow that? Not many people. Okay? So what tends to happen is that what the NIHR wanted to do is that people previously used to do academic training completely haphazardly. You do all your specialist training, you'd be a SBR or a senior registrar, and you do a bit of research, you finally quite liked it, and off you went. And then there were some people who were really keen and enthusiastic who dropped out early because there wasn't a very good structure. So 10 years ago they introduced this training structure, and it's grown and improved and grown and improved. And the academic clinical lecturers currently in post, often they've been through the academic foundation programme from the beginning. So a lot of these people coming out the end of it now have been in the training programme from the beginning. So it does actually do what it says it's going to do. However, what often happens is people come in and out at different stages. So one of the key things I want to say is if you want to do academic training and you don't get an academic foundation post, it really isn't the end of the world. Okay, you can do ACF without having done an academic foundation, you can do a PhD without having done an ACF. You can't do an ACL without having done a PhD, but you can enter all the other points. And the other thing is you can exit all the other points. Okay, so doing an academic foundation now does not commit you to apply for a clinician scientist award in 12 years' time. So most people come in and out at different stages. And what that means is the NHS gets people who have been trained with some academic or educational skills that they wouldn't otherwise have got. So the NHS gains from better informed, better trained doctors at every stage. Knowing how to read a paper, knowing how to interpret data, knowing how to do audit properly or improve them properly, advantages everybody. So there is always good to be gained even if you don't follow the pathway. So knowing that is quite useful at interview because people will expect you to know the stages. No one will hold you to anything that you say in that room. Okay? But just remember, interviews are a little bit of, I won't say the word game, but they are there to serve a purpose. They're not necessarily trying to be openly transparent and honest about every single thing in your deepest, darkest. Okay, so application process. I'll just spend 5 minutes on the application process. Who's applying this year? How many? Quite a lot. Have you started your application? No, have you seen the forms? When does it open? Should know.
Start of October.
I put it in my talk. I don't actually know. Okay. AFPCF, my 3-slide advert for CMFT. Okay. So we have 6 posts in FY1, 6 posts in FY2. We are one of those centres that do not offer any fixed appointments, schedules, specialties or projects. That may be good, may be bad. I think it's good. Projects are driven by you. So I spend most of October taking emails about people who want to do cardiology or cardiovascular or rheumatology or neurosurgery or paediatrics, and can they do it? The answer is if CMFT have a specialty, then they will offer you potentially academic training within it. There are key specialties that the Trust is very good at supporting, and they're on our website on the form that we prepare for you. And if you don't know when you turn up, we can have a conversation and we can guide you there afterwards. I kind of expect that you are the ones that drive it. Okay, so I won't set it up for you, but if you're not sure who to speak to, what to do, how to do it, then I'm more than happy to help you, but I will not tell you what to do. You do a 4-month block in FY2, so all of it's done in one go. Your only clinical duty in that time is in terms of teaching. Nothing else. So you're unbanded as well, bear that in mind. See, people do locums. Okay. What we don't have is a couple of key specialties that some people want to do because of the way Manchester healthcare is set up. So most of the oncology happens at Christie, so we have a little bit of gynae oncology. We don't really have plastics or neurosurgery because they're elsewhere as well. But most of the time we have other things. Dermatology, most of it's at Salford, but most of the other things are there. Most of our supervisors have links with the university, which is a key thing to ask if you're doing a research programme. And you can have a placement or an attachment either here or there. You do need a clinical supervisor that's based in the trust. So one of the problems we've had recently is people wanting to go outside of Manchester for their project. That won't really happen very easily. It certainly won't happen leaving the central Manchester conurbation. It definitely won't happen going to London. It definitely won't happen going to the States. Okay. Central and university are where most of them happen. The same rule is applying in Salford, it will apply in somewhere else as well. You can't disappear for 4 months. Okay. We offer research predominantly, but honestly, if you came up wanting to do education, that's fine. What we additionally offer is every foundation doctor can have, an academic foundation doctor has access to university IT, so you'll get a university IT password from FY1 onwards. I arrange monthly, approximately, AFP teaching in the clinical research facility. We have an hour a month. We'll either get researchers in to talk about their projects, we'll talk about stats, we'll talk about data, we'll talk about project overview. We'll get the AFPs to feed back to the group. The one thing we do offer that I don't think anywhere else offers in the country is that we offer you, in your 4-month block, a half a day or a day a week in the clinical research facility. So those people who aren't quite sure what they want to do, who want to do clinical research or whose projects aren't always going to end up in a Nature paper, then sometimes you need something else from your experience. And we offer you clinical trials experience and other observational type research with additional teaching in the clinical research facility. So you can sit in on meetings about study development and study planning, sit on ethics meetings and other things. So it's actually quite a useful thing to do. And we ask you to feedback if you do that to the staff at the CRF as to what you've learned and how you've got on. So there's a presentation as well, which is quite good. Okay. So that's the advert over. So application. Do all of you know the application process? My teaching to the converted, some of you know. I'm not an expert in the first bit. The first bit is that you apply through the National Foundation Programme website, and at the time of applying you have to make it known, how that happens I don't know, that you want to do the academic training. So there's a separate form, we tick the box on number 4 vacancies. So the application window is the same as the Foundation Programme. And then shortlisting is basically based on your medical school performance and where you sit and stand. So to get to shortlisting, there's a line drawn on performance. The deanery, none of us have any influence over that whatsoever. Okay, there is a simple line in the list of people based on performance. This is the timeline, so I should have known because I've just asked you this. So 3rd of October it opens, closes 14th of October. Northwest shortlisting is in November. Northwest interviews are 5th of January-ish. Okay. And it's worth bearing in mind you're applying to the Northwest, which is Mersey, Manchester and Manchester. Okay, that's changed last year. So, AFP posts in the Northwest, 57 posts in the Northwest, spread across those 3 areas. What you can't necessarily do is pick one of those as the only one that you apply to. You're applying to the Northwest. Okay? You can make a preference, and you can rank where you want to go, and you don't have to accept a post that you don't want, but you can't say, I only want to apply for Aintree. Okay? And you'll see there's a spread of what's offered. We're down as only offering research, but actually that's not always true. I think the same would be said for South and Salford, to be honest. I think the Manchester ones just say their research, but numbers, what's your odds, what's your chances? So I think we have sort of 500-600 each year wanting to apply for the foundation programme. We look at 230 applications at shortlisting day-ish, and we shortlist for interview half of those, and then half of those are appointed. Not all of them are appointed in the first round because some people's first preferences are elsewhere. So, do you know about the matching? So the matching is quite a complicated algorithm that I don't understand at all. essentially you have to, the top performing person puts their first preference, and that then goes down the list. So it may be that the top performing person at an interview doesn't want to come to the Northwest. Okay. So the application process, the shortlisting. So once you've done your application online and you've filled in the answers to the questions, we see those. There's a day-long event in Liverpool this year, and there's a lot of people involved in shortlisting. There's probably 50 or 60 people. Okay, clinicians, and there's some administrators in there as well. We only see the answers to your white space questions. We do not see your CV, we do not see your qualifications, we do not see your medical schools, we do not see your name, we do not see where you're from. So don't think that because your supervisor is around that they'll know who you are from your answers. Okay? My only tips really are fairly basic. Answer the question. It's amazing how many people don't answer the question. It's very hard to score somebody well if they've not answered the question that they've been asked. Be fairly succinct, don't ramble. Be specific. If you ask for an example, give an example. Okay? So these are fairly basic things. There's usually only 3 white space questions, and there's normally only 200 words per answer. So don't faff about. If you are successful in shortlisting and you get asked to interview, in Manchester, in the Northwest, you'll be invited to interview in January, and it's at the Etihad, I think, again this year. It was last year. Did you come to the Etihad? Yeah? It's actually quite a nice interview place, the Etihad. Nice bacon sandwiches. It's an OSCE structure, so you rotate around. Okay, and there's usually 2 or 3 members on each panel, and you normally have 3 stations, I should know. 3 stations. The panels are usually mixed between senior clinicians and or academics, and maybe more junior ones who haven't interviewed before. It's the same question for every person on every panel. Some interviewers are better at making it a bit more interesting when they ask it, but some will just read the question verbatim. Okay? We don't have access to your CV. We don't have access to your shortlisting questions, we don't have access to your schools, we don't have access to your medical school history. You are scored purely and simply on how you do in that interview station. Each station is independently marked. Okay, so I don't know how you did on the station before, and I won't know how you did on the station afterwards. All of the stations are moderated. So last year I just wandered around going and sitting in various interviews to make sure that the people doing it were asking the same thing and scoring in the same way. So most interview tips are fairly standard. Answer the question. Okay, it's amazing, but it needs reiterating. Again, don't ramble in interviews. Be succinct, be concise, stop talking. Don't be put off by a blank face on the other side of the table. Okay, we're not allowed or requested not to give you any positive or negative feedback on the day. Okay, you will get a poker face. People will be encouraging if you're struggling, and they will. If you're having a bit of a mind blank, they will try and walk you through it, but they're not going to say, well done, that was brilliant. Okay? So don't feel bad if they don't do that. Pausing before answering is absolutely fine. And don't forget, it's an OSCE, so if one goes badly, there's 2 others that can salvage you. Okay, the next panel won't know. Coming back to that academic career structure, it's worth putting yourself into a where am I and where am I going to go mode, because that just means that people know that you've given it some thought and you kind of know where you want to go. Like I said before, no one's going to hold you to it. So if you say you want to do an ACF followed by a PhD and you think you might want to stay in academic training, no one's going to come back and check and then take your post away from you if you haven't done that. Okay. The key thing is be enthusiastic. Look as if you want to do academic foundation training. Okay? Don't look as though this is like pulling teeth, because that's quite hard. Be honest. So if you don't know the answer to something, or you're not quite sure what you want to do, but you're still very enthusiastic about the opportunities that academic training might offer you, then that's fine. That is not a problem whatsoever. Like I said, this is not ACF and it's not ACL. You don't have to be set in stone. One thing is, it's fairly obvious sometimes who not really bothered about the academic training bit, but just want a central hospital teaching post. They're usually the ones that aren't very enthusiastic or informed about the programme, but know a lot about the hospital where they want to go. people are aware of that when they're interviewing you. Once you've done the interview, offers of appointment come out shortly afterwards, and it's all based on preference and performance. Okay? So you may apply to the Northwest and you might only want to work in Aintree, but you might get offered somewhere else completely. Okay? And that just depends how you've done and how your peers have done. And again, I have no sight on that, I have no influence on that, that is done centrally. So if you do well, you're more likely to get your first choice. So I'm going to finish there. So I think Academic Foundation is a very good opportunity to do some additional things in your foundation programme. It's not essential if you want to do academic training later on. It is helpful, but it's not essential. It is quite competitive, perhaps more so than you think, and the programmes vary quite widely. So do your research before you apply and know why you want to go to that programme. And one of the key things is know what Academic Foundation is going to do for you individually. Okay? So I'll leave it there. I don't know if Matt wants to add anything.
Yeah.
Burning at that point.
We've also got Rosie, who's an AFP from Liverpool as well, come in. How did you guys want to do it? Shall I speak a bit?
Yeah, you can.
Which come here, and then if anyone wants to fire questions, then we can get these guys to answer it.
I'm just wondering what you said about the initial matching process, because what you're saying was quite different to how I understood it, something I've maybe got around with the stick. But so I've had a look at the Northwest tracks that have just come out, and there is a specific one that I want to do, but I would still have to rank all of the Northwest ones in order of preference, and it'd just be, do I get the offer the one I want or not, sort of thing.
Just to add to that, when we did it, it was
you
would
applied to the Northwest like as a whole, and then there was like loads of different advice about like should you put down like all the jobs you want to do, or should you just put down all you really, really want to do. Personally, I just put the ones down that I would have actually taken. But some people will, if they're not that bothered, they'll put down a few. But I don't know if it's changed.
It changes every year, so it's a variable process. But you are applying to the Northwest, so you can't then not put anything down in the Northwest.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, it's a specific one.
But so if you only want to work in Aintree, and then you only put Aintree down, then your chances of being appointed are purely based on you've got to do very, very well to get your first choice. Lots of other people want to do Aintree. So it depends if you only want that track. So that's, I think, the point of knowing what you want to do, and if you're happy to go to a number of places for academic training, foundation training, or if there is only one, then go for it.
Yeah.
But have a plan B.
Yeah.
So because each hospital offers particular programs, different types of AFP experiences, how would you prepare for an interview when you're applying for a deanery? I mean, you apply to a deanery, but there are variations between hospitals.
So I guess at interview, we don't know what you've applied for. So there's no listing that you've applied for CMFT in Aintree, but not Bolton or Pennine. So that comes out in the interview question. So your performance is based on how you respond to the questions. So don't think that the panel knows more than they do. They don't. So we're just trying to rank you in performance. So you need to approach it with you know about it, you're enthusiastic, you've done your research, that would come out and you score well on that. There's often things like, talk me through your CV, or what do you want to do, so that can be quite woolly to score, so being informed is quite useful.
different deaneries have different interview structures as well. So for the Northwest, the 3 stations, there was one on quite generic one, why the AFP, and as was mentioned before, it will sort of come out as to what your interests are, why you want to do that. And the next one was sort of data interpretation, where you were given a graph and you had to interpret that. So they just wanted to test your skills on that. And the final one was like an OSCE, clinical scenario, just to assess your competency. But different deaneries have different things. I've heard of ones in like Oxford, they can give you like a paper and they tell you to like write an abstract or something like that, and like they can really grill you on some technical details. So it really varies. I don't know if you've got anything else to add about the interviews.
Yeah, they're not like, it doesn't matter to say you've had like research and education, you're not going to have a station that's like just on education or just on research. The questions that you ask are generic, and then you will tailor that to show what your interest is.
That makes sense, yeah. Also, I want to ask you about how you got into academics. So I'm guessing the AFP wasn't around at the time.
What do you mean? in my early 40s. No, you're quite right, it wasn't. I did it the old-fashioned way, so I went in, I did my PhD during my specialist registrar years. So that's the difficulty, is that we had no structure. But don't forget that everyone that's interviewing you, everyone that's supervising you, everyone that's giving you career advice has done the same. They haven't had that structure. So it works without it. So everyone has got different route into academia, apart from those coming through in the last couple of years. A lot of those have followed that training programme. Don't be misled, it's not that much quicker than it used to be. Okay, it's just a little bit more clear as to how you can go from one place to the next. It doesn't shorten it particularly. So I got very into rheumatology as an SHO, and then I had a really good mentor and an advisor and a supervisor who I then went off and got a PhD funded, and then stayed in academia after that. But mentors, supervisors, very, 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 very important. If you find one that's good, stick to them like glue.
So say essentially if the AFP doesn't work out at this stage, are there opportunities to slide into academia?
Most definitely.
Okay.
In the same way that if you don't get a ACF post-foundation program, you come to ACF at a later stage. So the only thing you can't get into without having done something before is the ACL posts. You've got to have a PhD, and you can only apply for an academic clinical lectureship with a PhD having been awarded. So you can't bypass that bit. AFP, ACF, PhDs, you can get them from different angles. The most important thing is know what you want to do, stick into it, and get someone to be your mentor and supervisor who can help you open doors and keep you motivated.
Just to add to that, I was actually given some advice as well by an academic clinician who said, because I went to Manchester, did the MRes, and they said that at the end of that, some people even consider, if you know you want to do research and if you're interested in doing a PhD, some people, like, if you don't get the AFP, it's not the end of it. And they even said, you don't necessarily have to do an AFP. You might want to get that full 2 years of clinical experience if you know you're going to take 3 years out after that. So, as was mentioned, you can always get into academia along through your career. It's just a lot clearer path if you, well, not always clearer, because your research project might not work out, all your cells might die in the lab, and then your whole thing might collapse 3 months in. And at the same time, if you've just picked a track just because you're desperate to get that experience, it might not completely work out. So you have to bear everything in mind. You can always get into research and academia along.
That's the value of the programmes. What else do they offer you? So if they only offer you a fixed placement with somebody, and that's not quite what you want, what's the backup if it doesn't work out according to plan? And that's quite hard for you guys to think about, because you're thinking long term when you're thinking, well, I'm thinking long term, you're thinking 6 months in advance. So one of the reasons we introduced the additional sessions at the CMIT was because there were people who would do a lab project and then cells died, nothing worked. No abstracts, no conferences, no papers. And then that's quite hard to contemplate in a 4-month block. Doing research in 4 months is nigh on impossible. So that's the other thing, manage expectations. You are not going to change the world to get an Nature publication. Okay? 4 months is not long. So if your supervisor's saying, right, get ethics, recruit some patients, do some tests and write it up, that's not going to happen. Okay? That's what my job is, to make sure that you're not going off on something that you're not going to be able to complete. So that's a key question to ask.
I'd say as well, like, when you're looking at the track, it's really important to look at obviously like what research you want to do, but you need to look at the other jobs as well, because the other 5 jobs are going to be making up the majority of the rest of your time. And it is just one job out of the 6. So I wouldn't just purely pick it just based on a job, if you know what I mean, just on the research.
You know, if you wanted to do an education one in somewhere like Central that kind of offers it, doesn't, you just apply as if you're going to do research and then afterwards go, by the way, can I do education?
So don't forget that no one at interview knows what you're asking. You're not judged on where to go on what you say. So this is where it all breaks down a little bit. You want to do education, and then you put your preferences in order. I don't know as a central lead who gets attached to central until you turn up.
What I mean was, you know, if you got offered a place in say Central,
yeah,
could I then go, but by the way, I want to do education?
Yes, at central you could. I can't speak on everybody else's behalf. I don't quite know how they got that allocation, because I've never given them that information about having 6 research-only posts. I think that's historical, that we've always offered research. So sometimes that information isn't always as accurate as you think. Most big trusts, big university trusts, can offer a variety of things.
So have you emailed the dealer of South?
Email my equivalent somewhere else and they should be able to tell you. I would say to you, we can usually offer most. What we don't have is a track record in offering education and leadership, so you might say, oh, we're not the best place to do it. And I would say, maybe not, I don't know. But we've got some very big educators at the Trust, and it's easy to attach you to those. But it's not something we've got a record of doing, however, I wouldn't rule it out. And my foundation programme people are the same. They say we can offer anything. What you might do is actually go to Bolton. They won't be able to offer you research necessarily because they don't have the research infrastructure necessarily to do that.
Say you get an academic track and it's not got the job you definitely really want. Is it possible to switch subject or not? No.
Not really.
Track switching is a bit of a no-no.
Yeah. Okay, and I've got another
I've been in
question.
trouble for saying it's possible before, so it's a no-no.
What kind of things are you looking for in an AFP candidate?
Enthusiastic, keen, motivated, knowledgeable. Track record in research, nice but not essential. Knowing what you want to do and who you want to do it with shows that you're motivated and enthusiastic, but you don't have to come in with the supervisor already sorted out. Trajectory is quite a difficult thing, but trajectory is what academics look at. So if you've done loads of stuff before medical school, so one of the things you find in this job is that people apply to medical school having done degrees and publications and sometimes PhDs, and then do medical school and then think they want to do academic training. They don't always come out as good as those people who have come in from medical school, done an MRes, got really motivated and enthusiastic, or done an integrated degree. Think, look, I really want to have a go at this, and it comes across that although on paper one looks far more qualified than the other, in person it's obviously not always the way. And a lot of the scores are given for how you interact on the day. Because I can't see your CV.
Can I get a bit more basic on that? What's the absolute minimum requirement to be able to be considered to be shortlisted?
I don't think there is one. You have to perform well at your scores in terms of the first bit. So you have to be above the line. I don't know what that line is because it's not something I get involved in.
Like decile and things.
Yeah. Is it just based on decile, or is there any other factors?
I don't know. I know there was quite a range. I know there's obviously people in the top decile. Some of them got quite a few of them got interviews. I know people that were only like 6th and 7th, and they still got an interview. So it's not. It's not necessarily. But some of them did. The person I know, they did integrate as well. They did integrate as well, and do an MRes. So I know there is some scoring system of your application.
Yeah, I'm being slightly coy because I don't want to take you through the scoring systems, but there are points awarded for certain things like degrees and publications and presentations and things. How many points is not something that I would necessarily share. However, there are, but it's also about the recency of such things, which doesn't necessarily mean that if you did a paper 5 years ago before you came into medical school, that's the same as getting an abstract as a medical student. Okay, so play up things you've done more recently, put anything down that you think is of value. And it doesn't always favour the people that have got a packed CV. I think is probably the key thing to say.
Just to add to that, when you do apply, the AFP has like a separate application. So, because when you apply and you get 2 extra points for a publication, AFP's got a separate thing where you can add in publications, but you can also add in presentations and prizes and awards and things like that. Yeah. So I think that's
Just put everything.
Yeah.
Now, previously that wasn't really the case. That's been a relatively recent change. That actually, particularly in the Northwest, the academic achievements that you've got at medical school was in project.
I didn't have, I was later, so I did a BSc, and everyone that I knew that was applying for masters. So when I applied, I was like, I'm never going to get it because I don't have a master's, I don't have any research, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. But I said, don't let that put you off, because I just used all the projects that I'd done at medical school and they all kind of followed on from each other, and it showed sort of my interest, and it really put me off at first. So I didn't have the masters, but it did not make a difference at all. I did have an integrated degree, but not a master's.
It's true for most application processes. There's only a maximum number of points for each bit of the CV. So if you've got a missing bit, you're not massively penalised usually. Okay, so it's usually broken down. So you think about presentations and publications and integrated degrees, they all add, but they're not in one box, they're in multiple boxes, so you can score lots of opportunities to score.
Just to clarify about the publications, does it have to have a full NID to, is that as well as it is in the...
You won't find anybody going into PubMed and pulling it up. So, for instance, abstracts are often published in supplements, and supplements don't always have a PubMed ID, but that's a valid publication. Or it's a valid abstract, so it depends if it was an oral presentation or a poster presentation. So abstract supplementation, so abstract supplements are valid.
So are these the ones that you can go to a conference, present, and then they all get published in a large publication?
Of abstracts, and that doesn't, they don't have individual PubMed IDs usually. The supplement is sort of grouped together.
Okay. And that counts as a publication?
It can count as...
If the abstracts are published, it counts as a publication.
Okay.
Lots of abstracts aren't published in supplements, so if you know it's been published as a supplement, that's a published abstract.
Okay.
Always keep them if you present at a conference. I was just told by someone, keep it, because sometimes in an interview they might, well, they won't ask you to do it, but it's just good to keep it, so you have it.
The interview technique here, guys, you can drop things into conversation that aren't necessarily part of the question. So you can, if you're asked about your experience, you can say, when I did my abstract publication, it was published in X. I don't know that until you tell me, and I'm not asking you that, but you can tell me that without necessarily annoying me. So just think about how you do it. Technique is everything, like exam technique and interview technique. Okay, there's ways of doing things. Don't not answer the question, but you can certainly mix it in a little bit.
Don't do too much, though.
Oh yeah, they will now know if everyone answers their question by when I did this publication.
Just looking at this, it says like if they get the initial offers in mid-January and then later offers later on. Because I don't know if I'm going to do this or the normal one yet, but at what point do you have to decide? So obviously you like F-class.
What are you looking at? Sorry,
just on the table here it says like initial AFP offers and then first cascade offers. Is that like later?
So the AFP is appointed to before the foundation programme in general. There's no interviews for foundation programme. So if you are appointed to the academic foundation programme, then you won't be going into the foundation programme pool of applicants.
Okay.
So I don't quite know the timing differences, but if you then reject an offer and then go into the foundation programme general, then you've got there's a gap because you're moving from one pot to another, and the foundation programmes are academic foundation programmes are separate and hived off. So
you've got to decide by October and put your application in. And if you put your application in, obviously then you can kind of go down the academic path.
And you can always come back out and go back into the foundation programme.
Okay.
So if you're unsuccessful completely, then your application, you'll then have to go into the foundation programme application process.
Are you looking at the January shortlisting? Is that what you're looking at? The January thing? Because what happens is like they'll have the first round, you'll get like the first round of offers, and then like you were saying before, some people won't want to come to the Northwest, they want to go other places, and then there'll be like gaps, so then the week after they'll offer it to the next lot. So that's why there's a couple of different
that makes more sense.
Because something like, you have like, I don't know how much time you have to accept for a job?
2 days.
2 days. So every round is a 2-day delay.
We got our offers in the middle of finals last year, so we had like an exam on the Tuesday, didn't we? We got the offer on the Wednesday, and then the final on Thursday.
As I say, I have no influence on that. I don't even have sight on it. So I don't even know. When I interview, the next thing I know is when I get told in about May who's coming. That's as much as I know. So apologies speaking.
This is more of a question to you two guys. The clinical station in the interview, is it kind of on par with finals OSCEs for like what's expected of you?
Sort of. It's around, like, the interview's like a few weeks before your finals anyway, I think. Is it?
It's
a
week
before.
before.
A week before, so you should be at that point.
If I'm at like finals.
They just want to see that you're competent.
So I won't talk about what the questions are and how they mark, but what I will say is like I said before, you've got to be clinically competent to come into academic foundation training because you've got less time. So if that station doesn't go well, if there is a clinical station on any of your applications nationally and it doesn't go well, that tends to kibosh what happens thereafter. Just to add a bit of pressure.
In terms of the three different areas, do you need to show like equal evidence of them in your application? So if you're interested in research, do you have to show you've done management?
No, you can just be one, all the way through your application. Research, 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 or education, education, education. You don't have to be interested in all three.
And they ask you in an interview, when you sit down, they say, which one are you interested in? And you say, education, research, and you'd say, okay, then tell me about that, and then you go from there.
I'm just curious, how do clinicians typically integrate a PhD with a clinical career?
So PhDs are out of programme. So you take 3 years out, or 4 years.
So you're not working, don't have a source of income during that time?
No, most clinicians are paid as PhD students, so they go out. The reason PhDs are difficult and competitive is because there's funding attached to them, and the funding is usually mostly your salary for a 3-year period. So PhDs are, there's 2 or 3 sources of PhDs. You can go into university that has a programme set up and the university pays for it somehow, be that slush money, be that other money. There are the charities that offer clinical research training programmes where they say we'll fund people for 3 or 4 years. And then there's the funding councils, MRC, Wellcome Trust. And the reason they're expensive and competitive is because your salary for 3 years with pension and all of this is quite a lot of money. So they usually come in around £250,000 for a 3-year training pension. So, and then you're employed by the university for that period of time. So you've gone out of the NHS, and you go completely to the university, and then you go back to the NHS, or you stay in the university as a clinical lecturer, and you train part-time, 50-50.
Can you locum do that?
So,
Can you locum while you're doing your PhD? Because it must be quite hard to do 3 years out and then go back into clinical.
yeah, so PhDs are complicated because you have to say at the outset what training you're going to do, if any. Most people doing PhDs will do a clinical-based PhD, or at least with a clinical supervisor somewhere, and in their specialty that they're interested in, which is why you tend to do it post-ACF once you've got run-through training or you need to get a number or something. So you do it at that time, so you're doing it in your area of specialty that you're going to be a consultant in at some point, or a GP. Most of us, so when I did mine, we all did a clinical week. So you have some kind of contact with your specialty, and then people tend to do things like locums in the evenings or at weekends, or they would do an on-call shift as part of their programme. So surgeons particularly have to have their clinical skills kept up to date, which is why surgical academic training is a bit trickier than medical specialties. But it's a big undertaking, it's not something to do lightly. It affects your pay packet, it slows your progression down in terms of getting a consultant post. It's usually very rewarding.
During the interview, can you talk about both education and research AFPs, or is that frowned upon?
Just be careful you don't look as if you're not quite sure what you want to do. By interview, people do expect you to know what you want to do in the foundation programme. You might not want to know what you want to do for life.
I'd be interested in both of them. Like, for instance, if you would prefer research, I mean, personally, I prefer research AFP, but if I got education AFP as well, I would do the duties.
So again, it depends what you've applied for in the first place, but the interviewers don't necessarily know what you've applied for. What they'll say is on one particular station, they may say to you, what are you interested in, research or academy or education? But on the other ones, they might not know. So just be careful that you don't appear as though you're not quite sure and you're just chancing your arm a little bit in either way. Yeah. So my advice would be to pick an area and say, but equally you are interested in other things, but you will think you want to do this. When you're in post, you do what you want. You know? So most of the guys at Central, I must be honest, they're amazing. They tend to do lots of other stuff as well. So lots of them do teaching, lots of them do education, lots of them take little ECG things. There's so many things you can do in that 4 months that don't have to just be focused on the project that you said you're going to do. You've got time. got a bit of time.
But doing interviews with brokers.
In an interview, just be careful, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're interested in doing leadership and management, and you're interested because you want to be a clinician, but you want to kind of go within, branch of clinical governance and management, and therefore you're not necessarily interested in carrying on in the ACF PhD kind of route, but you are interested in being involved in leadership and management, that's not going to count against you when you're talking about sort of future plans.
No, because you know that there is a difference.
Yeah.
Be aware that there are programs around leadership that you can get into as a junior doctor. So there are attachments at deaneries, there are attachments at the Department of Health, there's attachments in improvement, there's lots of things that you can do that relate to leadership and management that are a little bit similar to ACF and PhDs, where you can go off and do a year's placement somewhere. So again, if you're really that way inclined, then if you know about that, you'll come across much better than thinking I might want to do some leadership for a few months.
Is there any way I could find out more details?
I'd have to think. There are a couple of people I know who've gone into those sorts of programs, and it's like a year out. I'd have to dig it out. Let me have a think about that. There are. If I can email Prakar, maybe if I can ask the person I know who's done it. But the deaneries are a good place to start.
Yeah.
They will host people.
Short question. Would you be shooting yourself in the foot if you're talking about your future plans and you're not sure whether you actually want to stay in this country, like go to America after
No. You're being appointed to the academic foundation program, you're not being appointed to clinical academic training. So if you think you're not committed to the UK, but you want to take a career out overseas, again, it's just about knowing what you want to do and being enthusiastic, and how the academic foundation program would help you achieve what you want to achieve. So if there's a link, bring the link out. Okay, we've run out of questions. Great.